here we are with Mookie Tenembaum. We are exploring through these videos his philosophy, his disillusionist theory. And as you know, we've been trying for a while now to apply some of his concepts to situations in everyday life. We are around mid-August 2021, still amidst the COVID-19 pandemic since the very beginning of this exercise. And we are amidst a very tough war going on in Afghanistan, as everyone knows. But we are going to focus on a very different bit of news. Some of you might have heard of this, some not necessarily so much. We are going to speak about a compatriot of ours, who is Lionel Messi. He's Argentine-born, very, very famous soccer player, arguably the most revered, the best paid sportsman in the world today. And what we've seen in the last days is the drama of his transfer from the Barcelona Football Club to the Paris Saint-Germain. Millions of dollars involved, of course, but we've seen this character, this very famous, very rich, very celebrated person crying before the cameras and evidently distressed and suffering. As I said, with the background of the horrendous suffering around the world with the pandemic, with wars raging and stuff. So we are going to try and utilize this example to understand some elements in the misalgic theory, some aspects of human behavior when it comes to suffering, one's own suffering and others people's suffering.
Well, first, let me a little bit add to that description, because many of our people in our English-speaking audience may not be very familiar. But Messi is an Argentinian-born, as you said, footballer who left very young from Argentina to Spain because he couldn't afford. He had some medical problems, and the Barcelona Football Club took him because he was a very good footballer at the time, and they took him under their wing, and they solved his medical problem. They really were great, and he became part of the very young generation. But he was like the greatest footballer ever, and he always said, "I will never leave Barcelona. I owe them my career. I owe them everything." And everything was fine. Just to put this person in perspective, he has been convicted for embezzling the Spanish tax authorities for a huge amount of money. He was given 2 years suspended sentence, so he's a convicted criminal as well. I don't have to say that in Spanish everybody knows about it, but in English it's important to know. But still, it's irrelevant. He's like Michael Jordan and Mookie Wilson and two other great American footballers. Yes, O.J. Simpson, all put together in one talent, brilliant talent. And that suddenly they came with he asked from Barcelona for a huge amount of money. He's at the end of his career, and they say, "We cannot afford you." PS Saint-Germain, which is owned by Qatar, by the Emir of Qatar, had a lot of money, so they offered him, and he left not before, as you said, giving a press conference in which he cried his heart out, saying how hard it is for him to leave Barcelona. Now, let me go first. Now that I explained who Messi was, let me tell you, first of all, what is the basis, the theoretical basis on which we're going to analyze this issue. Basically, is this. We know, under the misalgic theory, that the only thing we do in life is run away from suffering. How do run away from suffering? Running away from suffering, that's the only thing we do. And there is 3 ways to do it, really. One way is to, at all, avoid the suffering in question, get a vaccine. I think today everybody knows how it works, not to be sick. Second one, once you are sick, you take aspirins if you have a headache, or chemotherapy if you have cancer. And the third one, a very common way of dealing with suffering is distraction. Okay, I'll go to the most extreme case, which is women, very young girls, cutting themselves, so to distract their emotional pain of being somehow bullied or or mistreated in the social networks, for example, and they cut themselves. So when they feel that pain, they don't feel that the other pain. So this is the most extreme way of distraction. In general, is much more benign the way we distract, but it has to be, of course, proportional. It has to be able to distract you. And here the reason I'm bringing this in is because Messi is in many ways he's a distraction. He's a great distraction. Okay, so first of all, the first thing is that man stands and he cries, and people say three different things. Some said, "Wow, how much he's suffering." They feel empathy. They cry themselves, and that's a group. Another group says, "Come on, he's making $100 million, and now he's crying. He could have forgo the $100 million and stay there. It doesn't make any sense. We're in the middle of a pandemic, 4 million dead, and he's crying because he's not getting his the hundreds of millions. Because we're talking about not just millions, a lot of money. And so that and then there is a third group that as you say, you pointed out in a previous conversation to me, is that they don't believe to his crying, his anguish. He's not anguish. He's not suffering. It's all he's just being an actor. That doesn't sound very very convincing because, as you know, he's not an actor. He's barely a role player, and he's not exactly the most eloquent person speaking. So it doesn't make any sense. But the main issue here is that people don't understand. Those who says why is he suffering if he's making so much money is an effect of something we spoke about it, and that was the classes theory, the disillusionist class theory, that says that if I am in this class, economic class or social class, and I go to the next class, I believe that my problems here will be solved by the money or the prestige or the success the next class will give me, or maybe the relations. And they may be right, but then a new suffering will arrive because everybody runs away from suffering. So Messi is suffering, and you are not. There is no such a thing as are you entitled to suffer? Is this? But Florencio, before I continue with this, I want to make a stop and listen to
No. I think this structure you're describing, you once showed it. I remember in a very early video of this series, you actually showed it with a box of tissues, and one tissue came after the other, as sufferings are bound to take the place of a previous suffering once this one is alleviated or forgotten or somehow overcome. But my question has to do with an aspect that I think it's relevant to the current situation. It's a special aspect. As you say, everyone who is higher up in terms of economy, social prestige and stuff, for me, it's hard to picture him suffering, and it's harder to empathize, to relate to his or her suffering. But in this case, there's, I think, an additional layer that has to do with your theory, and it's the layer of fame and celebrity and the whole epic narrative that comes with this particular character. He's, of course, a very rich man. He's, of course, a very successful man. But even more than that, he's a worldwide celebrity with, I would say, a sort of epic saga surrounding his life. So how does this combine with what you've been describing when it comes to us trying to relate with his suffering, if we believe it is actual suffering, right?
What you describe as a layer of fame, I would say it's a veneer. It's really not a layer. There is, I mean, this guy wakes up in the morning, yes, and he changes clothes, and he takes a shower. He's the same guy as you and me. There is nothing else. He is bound by all the human burdens, suffering, like everybody else. The question is, again, is you talked about empathy, and this is very important. Because if I watch the TV and I see a child crying because he lost one of his parents in a war or something, there is no way I will not feel some kind of empathy. There may be some people who says, don't show me that, there is so many children suffering. This is just the TV trying to sell me. There will be, but most of us will need first to overcome that empathy, that feeling of empathy. When this is happening to somebody who is immensely rich, immensely popular, there will be a tendency, and there is a tendency, first of all, in the people who suffer from envy, who are envious. For them, of course, this could be a great moment. Yes, if they believe he's suffering, yes, it's music to their ears. You see, karma. Now you see, karma. What karma? You're living in the next day he was training. It wasn't that bad. But the other part is that it's almost unbelievable that a person like that can suffer. But that's because we think in a bidimensional concept. It's not 3D. You think of the person, the one that you see on the television. You think, oh, if I were him, I would go and buy myself something, and he can walk everywhere and everybody will recognize him. Which I can tell you, it is a very important kind of suffering. Every famous person almost in the world will tell you that they regret they cannot walk into a store and browse browse the shirts and choose a shirt without people being on top of him. And I've seen, in the case of Messi, I'm a witness. I've seen him in a restaurant and people just don't allow him to eat. I mean, but again, I think he's suffering like us. He's not suffering more. It's not that I have, oh, poor Messi. He has to. That's the life he chose. And when you choose a certain life, or when you end up in a life, it comes with the packages of suffering, as you say, in a tissue box. One will come after the other, and then the next one, and then the next one. And maybe the next suffering will be that he will miss a penalty, or something like that. You say, well, you crazy? I mean, you are the most famous person in the world. This is very important for the misalgic theory. We have to understand what happens to him. But then there is the other side. That is what happens to us, the Messi in us. There is two different Messis. The guy who wakes up in the morning and brushes his teeth and cries in a conference ball and hit the ball, and he's a fantastic kicker. That's one guy. The epic of that guy, we understand a lot surrounded by epic, but then there's the Messi we have here in our brain, in our head. That kind of Messi. So we expect from that Messi certain things that they don't exist, that we would expect from King Arthur and his the round table. I mean, it's a mythical figure. It could as well not existed than exist. It is the same for us here in the brain. Of course, not for him. Very different. But for us, Messi may not exist. It could be a myth, and we still feel the same things. In fact, when we watch a movie and there is an actor who is being paid to cry on camera, sometimes crying really because he uses the method, so he really gets to cry, and you start crying with him. And if something we know is that there is no guy, there is an actor, he gets paid for it. Still, we are very. So Messi basically is an illusion. There is a real Messi in this case, but the Messi I'm talking about is an illusion. What is an illusion? That if tomorrow I have an attack of amnesia, it will disappear. And that Messi, that illusion, Florencio, that Messi illusion is there in our brain to distract us from the pandemic, from all the other things. He's a distraction.
Absolutely. I completely agree, but I wanted to underline something you mentioned there in passing, which is, you said, if I were him. I think it's also an illusion in the sense that sometimes we can dream about being in that position. And from that point of view, seeing him suffering and seeing him crying, it's a sort of disillusionment, isn't it? Because in a way you picture yourself, you project yourself there, which I think we do not do with other illusions. I don't think anyone thinks, if I were God, if I were the French Republic, this doesn't happen. But in this case, it's an illusion you can somehow picture yourself being, right?
Well, the same thing happened with President Biden. I mean, it's exactly the same stories. Yes? We, of course, the fact that he exists, that he physically exists, allows us to not stop, like in a movie. Yes, I mean, when you get out of the movie theater, the whole thing disappears. Here, it continues to be there, and it is shared. This is something. The pandemic is a shared suffering, not really shared, because each one of us suffering cannot be shared. It's not shared, but it's at the same time. Here with Messi, it's the same. We all are part of that. We all are part of the race of this star getting us a ton. We are getting a ton from this race. Yes? All of us look a little bit, tanned. And as you say, you're right. The moment he cries, he's destroying a little bit that part of that illusionary part, and it's a problem. But at the same time, during all those hours and the hours we continue speaking about him, we are distracted from the pandemic. We are distracted from the fact that in a couple of days, maybe 9/11, the Taliban will take over and make from all the women slaves, or most of the single women slaves. We don't care about it. We cannot think about it, and we can think about Messi, argue about him, fight about him. But it's like fighting about King Arthur's sword. Did it exist or did it not? No?
Interesting. Well, we're out of time today, but we'll go back, I'm sure, to this kind of problems with mysalgia and illusions. Thank you very much. See you next time.
If you enjoyed the video, please like it, comment and subscribe.